So, brief agenda for what we wanted to cover today. The first section of this presentation is really meant to be an introduction to the project and the goals, kind of more thoughtful conversation about that, an introduction to you all, the advisory committee, and kind of who you all are, where you're coming from, and what role we see you playing in this process. We'd also like to introduce our project team, which is Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy, but also Pashik MTR, who's joining us, who is going to be our lead consultant. And then we'll go through the project schedule as well. The next section of the presentation is really going to focus on the site and the opportunities that the site has, kind of familiarize everyone with the project area that we're talking about, kind of why we think it's cool and special and worthy project to pursue, as well as some of the current uses that are out there, just so you're more familiar with what's happening now and what the opportunities are. And then the last section of the presentation is about engagement. And this is where we really want to get some feedback from you all in this process. So we want to discuss our engagement approach, how we're going to be talking to the community members and stakeholders who could be interested in providing feedback for this project, our outreach strategy, how we're going to get the word out, as well as how we're going to take input, accommodations and inclusion, making sure that we are being inclusive in this process and that everyone can participate, and then a discussion of focus groups and some of the more detailed conversations we want to have. We definitely like to have your input on who we should be talking to for that. Just a couple ground rules before we go in. We're going to ask that everyone please stay muted. We have closed captioning enabled for this presentation for some folks who need it. And if there's a lot of chat or background noise, it can kind of make the captioning a little unclear. So stay muted until it's time to speak, and that will keep the captioning clear. That would be much appreciated. That does not mean you can't participate. So if you have a question, a comment, you need something repeated, please raise your hand using the raise hand function in Zoom, and we'll make sure we call on you. You can unmute yourself and talk then. We're also going to ask that everyone avoid using the group chat and instead use the private chat function. The reason being that if there are folks on this call who might be using screen readers, the chat will the screen reader will pick up everything that's happening in the chat. So while we appreciate people sending in chats or comments that are meant to be not intrusive into the presentation, it could be intrusive for someone who's listening with a screen reader because it could be competing with what we're trying to say. So at this point in time, we'd ask everyone to just set your chat setting to privately message Erin Tobin. And if you have a question, a comment, something you want to share, send it to her, and we'll take breaks during the presentation to kind of read those chats out and discuss. Before we get into the project, we thought it might just be good to kind of all introduce ourselves, just who you are and what organization you represent. So what I'll do is I'll start, and then I'll just read off people's names and ask them to introduce themselves and their organization. So again, Brandon Riley, Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy, I'm the Capital Projects Manager. And next on my screen is Kara.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kara Rogenkamp. I'm a principal with Pashik MTR. We're a landscape architecture and community planning firm.
Kara, Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex.
You know what? You have to stay muted. I'm gonna pick it up. Sorry. We're trying a new format here. Did you guys hear her okay? No. Our conference room microphone has terrible audio quality, so we're trying something different, but it didn't work. Okay, I'm going to just introduce my team, if that's all right.
That works.
Okay. So I'm a principal with Pashik MTR, and I'll be the design lead and main contact for our client during this design process. We also have Alex Waggett, who you just saw on the screen. She's a landscape designer who's going to be doing a lot of the design support for the project. We also have Eric Brightman, who is a landscape architect with our firm, who will be kind of our technical lead. And then we also have Heather Fuller, who is a landscape architect with us. She is actually an accessibility specialist as well and has some specific training in that. So that's what she brings to our project.
Excellent. Thank you. Moving on, Braun. Sorry, I'm just going by your Zoom names for this.
Sorry about that. That's me. I'm Vanessa Braun. Oh, jeez. What?
Nice to meet you, Vanessa. JAM.
Anyway, I'm so sorry that didn't work before. I'm Vanessa Braun. I work at the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust.
Excellent. Nice to meet you, Vanessa. JAM is next. We can come back. How about we go to Ross?
Good morning, everyone. Ross Chapman. I'm the Chief of Operations and Park Equity here at the Conservancy. I work closely with the Community Engagement Planning team in Brandon and capital projects in our horticulture and forestry team and the education team and administrative stuff. So I'm kind of here to support a lot of the operations that happen here. And this is a really exciting project for us. So I'm excited to see you all here. Thanks again.
All right, Catherine Huninen.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Catherine Huninen with the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy. I'm the Senior Manager of Special Initiatives.
Thank you, Catherine. Meredith?
Yeah, hi, everyone. I'm Meredith Peterson, the Executive Director of the Down Syndrome Association of Pittsburgh.
Nice to meet you, Meredith. Amy, did I pronounce that right?
I'm assuming you're referring to me, Amy Tenerovich?
Yes.
Yes. I'm Amy Tenerovich. I am from Pittsburgh Public Schools. I am part of the program with students with exceptionalities.
Great. Nice to meet you, Amy.
Nice to meet you.
Emily.
Good morning, all. I'm Emily Yonan. I'm the Chief of Staff for Councilperson Erica Strasburger. So we're representing City Council, even though this technically isn't in our district. We'll definitely be participating in this, especially given that District 5 doesn't have anyone there currently. And we'll just still stay involved in the process because we're really excited about this project.
Thank you. Mallory.
Hey everyone, I'm Mallory. I work for Community Living and Support Services. We are located in Swissvale, very close to Frick Park, and we provide home and community-based services to folks with disabilities.
Nice to meet you, Mallory. Erin.
Hi, everybody. Erin Tobin, Community Engagement Manager with the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy. Thanks, everybody, for being here today.
Thank you, Erin. Hirsch.
Hi, everyone. Hirsch Merenstein, Senior Manager of Institutional Giving. Just started this Monday with the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy. So happy to be here and learn more about the project.
Thank you, Hirsch. Let's see. Zoom just reshuffled everyone, making this harder. Jamie.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. I'm Jamie Upshaw, and I'm the founder and executive director of Autism Urban Connections, Inc. I'm excited to be here and learn more about the project.
Nice to meet you, Jamie. Next up is Jen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jen Schnackenberg. I'm the interim director of education with the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy based here at the Frick Environmental Center.
Thank you, Jen. We'll go to Joe next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joe Karlovitz, Director of Finance at the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy.
Thank you, Joe. Tammy.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Tammy Morton. I'm Director of Operations for Autism Connection of PA.
Nice to meet you, Tammy. Mandy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mandy Gallagher, and I'm the Supervisor of Physical Therapy at the Western Pennsylvania School for Blind Children. happy to be part of this project.
Thank you. Matthew.
Morning, everybody. My name's Matt. I'm the program manager for disability accommodations and clinical services for UPMC, positioned within the health services division here at UPMC.
Nice to meet you, Matthew. Chip.
Hello, I'm Chip Gall. I am a project manager in the City of Pittsburgh's Department of Parks and Recreation. Thanks for having me.
Nice to meet you, Chip. Hillary.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see so many faces that I know. I'm Hillary Roman. I'm the ADA coordinator for the city, at least for another week and a half. So, you know, I love this project, and any lessons learned, you know, from this particular meeting, I'm happy to take back to the city as a stakeholder here.
Thank you, Hillary. We are definitely sad to see you go, but we appreciate you participating nonetheless. And Monica.
Hello, everyone. My name is Monica Smith. I'm the Talent Onboarding and Engagement Specialist, and I work for the Children's Institute of Pittsburgh.
Thank you, Monica. Nice to meet you. Okay, I think that's everyone, but did I miss anyone? Has anyone not had a chance to introduce themselves? I'll take your silence as that we got it right. So thank you all. It's nice to meet you all, and thank you all for being here. I think what we wanted to start is explain why we're all here. And kind of, we wanted to start with the project vision. I think we sent this image along, kind of a brief description, but maybe spend a little more time talking about what this project is about and what the goals are and why we need you all involved. So we received a generous grant from the Edith L. Trees Foundation. What we'd like to do is at the Frick Environmental Center, our vision is to create really a series of sensory experiences, a series of spaces that provide sensory experiences that teach park users about the natural world, and designed specifically for learners with exceptionalities and persons with disabilities to make sure it's an inclusive experience for everyone. So, you know, what we're seeing in this image is, you know, kind of at a conceptual level, what we're thinking about. You know, sort of an accessible route that winds its way through the meadow spaces and woodland spaces and all the natural spaces that exist here at the Frick Environmental Center. And along that route, there might be opportunities for discovery and learning and play and gathering and observation, as well as being able to provide sensory experiences, being able to, you know, to see, to smell, to taste, to touch, to hear the natural world around them and nature itself. And we're really, you know, the idea here is that this space is not an auxiliary of Frick Environmental Center and our educational staff. It will function that way. We will continue programming in these areas as we currently do, but really we want this to be broad and open to the public. We want educators from all over the city, users from all over the city to be able to come to this space and use this space in a variety of different ways to teach lessons about nature, to teach lessons about sensory experience, to teach lessons about themselves, and really keep it kind of open-ended. It's meant to be a public amenity. It's meant to be open and free to everyone, and be really kind of a one of a kind space in the city of Pittsburgh and really the region. And so that's kind of the overview. That's the broad vision that we're looking at. And some of the project goals on this next slide that we've established are, you know, I think the first thing is what we mentioned, learning through sensory experience and making the space flexible. So like I said, that could be teaching people about the senses and how they work in their body. It could be teaching users about how their senses interact with nature, interact with their environment, and how those two connect. Or it could be teaching users about environmental systems and ecosystems, but using sensory experience as kind of the mechanism or the driver for that education. But you know, this place has a lot of sensory input, a lot of sensory value, and being able to kind of use that as a teaching tool for folks, you know, all across the spectrum of all walks in life is important, is a priority goal of this project. Also, nature is the classroom. I think, you know, the term sensory classroom is a little bit misleading. It kind of gives you a vision or a connotation of we're developing one centralized space where everyone's going to gather and teach, similar to a classroom in school. That's not the intent here. The intent is these spaces together along this winding route. That is the classroom. Frick Park is the classroom, and beyond Frick Park. We want the lessons, the things that people learn and connect to here. We want those lessons to be taken with them wherever they go, in any kind of environment or forest or natural habitat that they might experience. The world is a classroom in a sense, and that's something we're going to strive to achieve. One of the main goals and tenets of this project is also making sure that we are following universal design for learning principles. Kind of that idea that the environment that someone is learning in needs to accommodate the different ways in which people learn, and not the other way around. We're not trying to force educational programming or learning experiences through the physical, through what has been designed. We're trying to make sure that what is designed accommodates the program or accommodates the various, needs and uses and accommodations that people need to have in order to learn in the way in which they learn best. And the other piece of that is inclusive design. This project is not going to, I think we hear the term accessible a lot. We don't mean to just check the boxes on the ADA requirements to make it accessible. It needs to be inclusive. It needs to feel that everyone belongs. There is going to be no normal route and accessible route. It's just going to be the route. It's going to be the way everyone goes through the space and experience the space. And that we're going to be looking at design, the physical design of the space, kind of through that lens to ensure that we're doing that to the greatest extent possible. It's also meant to be immersive and intuitive and flexible. A successful project in our mind with what we're trying to do, it could be spaces that you can take a more structured kind of curriculum or programming to teach kids about the differences between meadow and woodland ecosystems. Or it could be a space that functions well for a childcare facility to take their kids out for story time. Or it could be a space that functions for someone just walking through, enjoying a cup of coffee. The idea is that it's flexible, it makes sense to someone without having to have a structured, learning or teaching environment. It just works to however you need it to work. And the reason being is because this space is meant to be open and accessible to everyone. We want it to feel inviting to everyone. We want it to be as accessible and inclusive to everyone as we can. So those are sort of the main project goals that we're going to be striving to achieve as we move forward with this process. Moving on to the next slide. Here we have a list of the advisory committee that we've identified. A lot of you were here today. We know some folks couldn't make it or weren't going to be able to make it. And some folks might not be able to continue, but this is the list that we have at the moment. And the idea being your role, what we really want to get out of you folks in this project is one, to guide our process, kind of a high level, making sure that what we're doing is going to resonate with the people that we're trying to reach out to, making sure that we are considering things that we may have overlooked and really just kind of helping us get to a successful outcome. Another key thing we need help with from you all is advising approach. Are we talking to the right people? Reaching out to folks in the way that resonates with them or the way that's going to get them to participate. One sec. Can everyone hear me? My internet was a little unstable. So making sure we're getting the right people around to make sure we're having informative and thoughtful decisions made during the process. Also providing design feedback on the design we're going to develop through the course of this project, making sure we're making the right considerations and we're on track. And lastly, hold us accountable. Make sure that we're doing the things that we said we're going to do. We outlined some goals for you for this project. We need you all to look at the project as we're going through the designs, the recommendations we're making, and making sure it lines up with everything we've talked about to date. And if it doesn't, call us out on it so we can make sure we correct it and deliver what we promised. Moving on to the next slide, just a brief kind of overview of the project team and the different roles and how everything kind of connects. So the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy we are going to be kind of in charge of the overall project management and coordination. We're sort of leading the effort in that regard. We've hired Pashik MTR and the talented group of designers and their design team just to lead a lot of the design and the technical aspects of this project. So we're going to help get all the information to Pashik, and Pashik's going to help synthesize it and make it real. And part of their team as well, it's Ethos Collaborative, who's going to provide stormwater design and engineering services, and CAST, who is going to help us on the universal design for learning front, kind of helping us guide design decisions based on that, that module. Additionally, the city of Pittsburgh is going to provide project oversight. The goal of this current effort is to get a project, basically, we're going to design it to kind of a constructible level, almost like a shovel-ready project, and then find additional funding to build the project. So, submitting plans to the city of Pittsburgh for review, permitting, et cetera, making sure that we are meeting all applicable laws and statutes. The city is going to be crucial in that. And then you, the advisory committee, that project guidance that we kind of talked about, that overall supervision of what we're doing. Moving on to the next slide, just a little bit about the Parks Conservancy for folks who may not be familiar with us. Down on the left-hand side of this slide is really just it's our mission statement. So what we do is our goal is to improve the quality of life for the people of Pittsburgh by restoring the park system to excellence in partnership with government and the community. Projects and programs are conducted with respect for the environment, historic design, and the needs of a diverse region. That is our organization in a nutshell. Through programming, capital projects, maintenance of existing park spaces, et cetera. That is what we strive to do, to improve the park system in the city. The image that you're looking at now is a picture of the Frick Environmental Center, which was completed in 2016. And I think this facility kind of encapsulates that mission. This facility is a living building. It's a green building, so it leads the way in sustainability. It's LEED Platinum. It also respects some of the historic features of the site, and it serves as a gateway to Frick Park. It serves as a gateway to one of the city's largest park spaces. It's an education hub. We do a lot of educational programming, partner with educators from all over the city to run a lot of nature-based education programs to really try and get users to engage with this asset, and then hopefully other assets within the city, other parks. And so it hits all those points of trying to serve a diverse usership of people from all over the city, respecting some of the historic integrity of this area, but also really respecting environmental impacts and sustainability. It sort of encapsulates it, and that's what made this site or this facility an ideal location for the project that we're talking about. And just kind of real quick, you just met all of us, but in terms of who's going to be doing what on this project, as mentioned, I'm going to be the project lead. I'll probably, I'll be the one you might correspond with most, but I'll be kind of the clearinghouse of information and the overall organizer or manager for the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy. Erin Tobin is going to be our engagement lead. You can expect to see a lot of emails, follow-up emails, phone calls from her. She's going to be heading up the outreach efforts, not just with you all, but with the public. Catherine Hunanen is going to be our engagement support. She'll support with outreach efforts. She'll help facilitate meetings, attend events if necessary, to help us make sure that we're having a thorough engagement process. Jen Schnackenberg is going to be sort of our education lead. We have an education team that uses the space. So she's going to be kind of advising and providing feedback with that aspect in mind. And then Ross Chapman, as he sort of mentioned in his introduction, going to kind of oversee everything for the entire project, because he oversees a lot of the different groups and staff members who are going to be participating in this project from our end. And we also have support from our horticulture and forestry staff, our education staff, our visitor experience staff, who are going to provide feedback at key parts in the process to make sure that what we're doing is environmentally sensitive and responsive, is maintainable, and make sure we're maximizing the programming opportunities that are there. With that, on the next slide, I'd like to turn it over to Pashik MTR so that they can introduce themselves and their team.
Hi, everyone. So just a brief introduction to us and what we do in some of our previous experience. So we are a landscape architecture and community planning firm. We do a lot of work with outdoor learning environments, with conservation organizations, and with public spaces. So many familiar names on the advisory committee list. We love projects like this, pretty much our favorite kind of project to do. Nature-based play, outdoor learning, sensory gardens. And we've worked in the past for clients such as the city of Pittsburgh. Whiteman Park is one of our recent projects, which was designed with inclusive design in mind, working with a number of community advocates. We've also worked with the Pittsburgh Public Schools and the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy at places like Pioneer Education Center. And of course, with also universities with the Western Pennsylvania School for Blind Children. So we're very excited to be part of this project and very excited to work with everyone and get all of your great ideas for how we can make this the best project that it can be. Brandon, you want to move on to that? Yeah, there we go.
Sure.
I kind of introduced my team already, so I won't spend a lot of time on this slide, but if you couldn't see their faces before, here you go. And as Brandon mentioned, we have some sub-consultants to support us as well, including CAST.
Next slide to the schedule and process.
Yeah, so I think probably a lot of you have been through a design process before, and as you will know, we generally move from information gathering and kind of broad ideas, the wish list for what we want the project to be, as Brandon so eloquently described, and then we move on to more and more specific, looking at different options. And on this project, it's going to be important to really engage a wide variety of stakeholders. When we're talking about inclusive design and we're talking about students with exceptionalities, that encompasses just so many different individual circumstances. And it's part of our job to really put ourselves in the shoes of many different kinds of users and to learn from you and from the focus groups, from the public, much as we can to make this as inclusive a landscape as possible. And we're very excited to do that. So right now we are at the very first bullet point on this schedule, and we are just starting off. We are just starting the process of listening and learning. And as we move into next year, the next step after we have a series of focus groups and meetings is that we will prepare design options. So we will be looking at different ways that we can arrange the many different elements that we'd like the design to include on the site, different ways to make it as accessible and inclusive a space as possible to bring in different sensory experiences. We'll then be showing those design options to the Parks Conservancy, to our advisory committee, and to the public, and to stakeholder groups to get feedback. And as a result of that process, we'll then refine that design. We'll be honing in on the preferred arrangement of elements. And at that point, we'll also be looking very closely at costs. And then we'll be bringing that back to all of you, to the public, to various focus groups to get feedback on that. So we're really coming back many times and making sure that we understood the input we were given and that we're doing things in a way that makes the most sense and that works for everyone. And at that point, we'll be ready to really document the project, be moving into the phase where we are working out all the technical details and getting it ready for a contractor to build. So presenting that information in construction document format. Of course, at various points in the process as well, we'll be getting detailed review by city agencies and be making sure that we are meeting all those requirements. And we are hoping to make our way through this process in a very engagement-rich way and be ready to permit the project next summer. Brandon, I
Great.
missed anything you want to add?
No, that was great. I think you covered it, and just just recognize that the schedule is subject to change. There might be pieces of this where we have to spend some more time engaging or thinking about things. There's always something that comes up in a project that kind of can delay things. So our goal is July 15th, but we also recognize that this is a fairly aggressive and best case scenario schedule. We'll try and meet it as well as we can, but we also don't want to rush the project unnecessarily. So just you look at these dates, they're informative, but they are by no means going to be set in stone moving forward. And obviously we'll keep you all apprised as schedule changes. Moving on to the next section to talk about opportunities. Before we do that, are there any questions, comments, things that people need clarified before we move on? No? Aaron, was there anything in the chat? When I'm sharing my screen, I can't see everything.
There is not. Thank you.
Oh, okay. We'll just keep going ahead. So on to the next slide we wanted to orient everyone to Frick Park and the FEC because we realize some of you may be familiar with the space and some of you may not. So it's important to kind of get everyone in the same headspace. So Frick Park, as most of you are probably aware, it's one of the largest, or it is the largest city park, over 600 acres. It's located in the east end of Pittsburgh. With the image on the left shows kind of where it is located in the context of the city. It's adjacent to Regent Square, Swiss Elm Park, Squirrel Hill, Point Breeze. So it gets a lot of users. It's a regional park. There's a big draw to this park in general. The Frick Environmental Center is located kind of on the northeast corner of Frick Park, adjacent to Beechwood Boulevard in the Squirrel Hill neighborhood. And that serves as one of the main gateways into the park. Looking at the image on the right, kind of zooming into the environmental center and the 4-acre area that the Parks Conservancy operates and manages, there's already a lot of amenities here that are available to the public that are kind of unique and special. So there's the Frick Environmental Center building itself. But in addition to that, there's an outdoor amphitheater. There are historic gatehouses that were restored when this project was done in 2016. There's also the From Slavery to Freedom Garden, which is a vegetable garden that highlights vegetables and plants that were found in the woodlands and widely used by former slaves who were making their way towards freedom. And also a rainwater fountain that kind of takes a historic element of a fountain that used to be there in the park, but repurposes it with reused captured rainwater. And all of these amenities are free and open to the public. COVID changed that a little bit, but we're slowly opening back up, and everyone is being able to enjoy the space the way it was originally intended. In addition, there's parking and drop-off areas that are accessible. There's another parking lot that's covered by a solar array, and there are public restrooms both in the environmental center itself, as well as exterior public restrooms that are free and open to the public. Our project area is really located to the east of the environmental center and kind of adjacent to that fountain that we were just looking at. And it's approximately a 3-acre area that encompasses a number of different amenities and features of Frick Park that we think are special and worth engaging with. So one of those is the informal teaching space, or the informal nature play area that you can see here in this image, kind of just to the north of the South Clayton Trail. This area was created by our education staff with their literally their 2 hands. They developed this kind of informal teaching space to help augment or provide some additional teaching area within the context of Frick Park. It's adjacent to a meadow space. There are some large trees here, but they run a lot of their kind of informal camp programming or their nature-based play programming through this space. So this is an area that we wanted to look at as an opportunity to enhance and augment. Another piece of this site that we want to kind of enhance and formalize in a way is this paved nature trail. This was installed, I believe, in the 90s, about 20 years ago, and provided it was a paved, fully accessible nature trail that allowed users to move through this woodland loop area with some areas to stop along the way. But really, it's a stand-up woodland that kind of typifies the woodlands that you would experience throughout Frick Park. So it was an accessible experience that allowed people to enjoy that, as well as a large observation deck that kind of gave you a sense of enclosure and a sense of being in the trees. But this is a 20-year-old amenity, so this pavement is in need of repair. It would no longer pass the accessibility code sniff test these days. So in addition to those, we have trail connections throughout the park. So we saw this as a really great opportunity to formalize some of these informal spaces, augment them, and make them accessible and inclusive in a really kind of rich and diverse natural setting. So just diving into what those spaces feel like a little more, this next slide, focusing on the nature trail, the image to the left really kind of gives you the character of what that nature trail space feels like. It's a narrow path that winds its way through these large mature canopy trees. There are a number of logs and some understory plants and leaves, et cetera, on either side of the trail that people can interact with. But really, it provides the broader woodland Frick Park experience, but in a potentially accessible way. When you look at the image on the right, this is the image of the observation deck. This is a gathering space. It's cantilevered out over a steep slope. So you actually have the sense that you're up in the tree canopy and fully kind of encompassed by these mature trees all around. And you have an outlook kind of overview of the trail system below and the Fall Ravine kind of valley. It's a very unique space in Frick Park in and of itself, and is a great opportunity. Moving to that informal nature play area, that informal teaching space, the image on the left that you see here is something that's used by our education staff quite frequently. It's just kind of a circular space with some logs arranged in a circular fashion that provides seating and enclosure with a shade sail overhead. But it really allows for teaching and gathering in a very kind of natural setting with that kind of meadow area that you see in the background sort of encompassing you. And then in addition, on the image on the right, you see some pictures of there are logs to climb on. There's a mud table and some activity tables to really do some cool tactile nature-based informal play it's used by not only our staff but by just park users or childcare providers when they come to the park. One moment, I need some water. And then, as we mentioned, there are a lot of sensory experiences that are here in Frick Park that could be unlocked to a wide range of users. This image on the left shows just kind of its really cool looking log with turkey tail mushroom growing all over it. The image down below that, the lower left, is showing just some of the flora and fauna that are trail adjacent and the different kind of textures and colors that you can experience just walking along the trail. The image on the lower right just shows two different types of bark on trees that are literally 6 inches apart from each other, and how they're different species and just have entirely different looks and feels that you can touch and taste, and touch, probably not taste, but start to experience. And then the image on the upper right is an example of, it's not just trees and plants and flowers, but it's birds, it's bugs, it's insects, it's animals. It's the ones that belong here and it's the ones that don't. I'm sure some of you are aware this is a spotted lanternfly. So it's an educational opportunity, not just to teach people about their environment, but about the threats to their environment and why they should care. And some of these teaching moments are already happening here at Frick Park. So this is how it currently gets used a lot by our educational staff. So the image on the upper left is showing, kind of more exploration and observation, where they, a PPC educational staff person is picking up a log and they're exploring what kind of critters might be living underneath that log. The image on the top right is showing kind of that more tactile, imaginative play with a mud kitchen, where kids can just mix up mud and get dirty and pretend they're baking or whatever they're doing in their heads while they're playing with this, kind of nature-based element. The image on the lower right is just showing it's that idea of discovery and teaching people about their environment as you walk through the nature trail. Kids are learning about mushroom growth on a tree. And then the image on the lower left is, it's flexible. It can also just be a place to play, showing kids balancing on these logs with no structure, no formal goal other than just to have fun. So in a lot of ways, the spaces that we're talking about kind of do the project goals that we're looking for, but just not open to everyone. They're not fully inclusive and fully accessible. And that is really what we're striving for, because the groundwork is here. We have these spaces here. The framework for this project is here. We just need to just really improve it and make sure we're listening to everyone who could use this space, so it's truly inclusive. Taking a break there before we move into our engagement strategy. Questions, comments, concerns? No? Okay. We'll keep moving, and I'll turn it over to Aaron Tobin. And this next section is probably, we're going to be asking you questions a little bit more frequently, slide per slide basis, because this is where we, at least in this first initial step of this project, we need a lot of input from you all. So without further ado, Aaron, do you want to take it away?
Yes, thanks, Brandon. I just want to echo what Brandon just said. We are very much going to be relying heavily on the advisory committee to help support the engagement process. At the bottom of each of these next couple of slides, it says, what are we missing? So this is the approach that we've put together, but we would really, really appreciate feedback from you around what we're missing, what we could do better, how we could be thinking about things differently. Every project that we do requires a unique engagement process depending on the goals of the project. And so we just want to make sure that we're not missing the mark. And when we are, we really want you to speak up and let us know so that we can really make sure that we're being as inclusive as possible in this process and thinking outside the box, right? So Brandon put together this wonderful graphic here that kind of outlines the engagement approach. So you see at the heart, in the center of this process is the community, right? And so we're looking to engage with them in a variety of different ways through, online surveys, signage on site, actually in Frick Park, where people can utilize a QR code to go directly to the project website. We're looking to do public meetings, create some informational videos, have some workshops and design charrettes. We plan to have both in-person and virtual meetings, in-person kind of like workshops and design charrettes, and then also on-site meetings with folks. And then, like I said, we're just, we're looking to have all of that kind of come together and be funneled back to the project team. Also, working very closely with you all on the advisory committee. And then we are also going to be developing some focus groups. Next slide, please. And so here's a little bit more information around what we think the outreach strategy should include. So initially, the outreach methods, how are we getting the word out about this project? We will be utilizing the Engage website, the city's Engage Pittsburgh website. Like I said on the last slide, we'll be doing informational videos. We will be providing press releases, the on-site signage, social media, email, target flyers, all the regular stuff that we do for all of our engagement projects. And we are truly looking for what other ways can we be getting the word out about this project, and how should we be connecting with different folks that we haven't connected with yet. And then, how are we collecting that information? Again, public meetings, focus groups, workshops, surveys, direct feedback. So Brandon was saying at the beginning of this presentation, he's going to be the main person that's going to be probably communicating with most people on an individual basis. But, we want to make sure that people feel comfortable, say something comes up after, today's meeting and you think of an idea or you have a question, like, please don't hesitate to reach out. We want as much feedback as we can get, and we want to make sure that we're making ourselves available. So please, that last bullet point point around direct individual feedback, please don't hesitate to reach out throughout the entire process and provide us with the feedback that you have. Next slide, please. And then this last slide here is about accommodations. So this is a really special project. It is a project that I think for me personally, I haven't worked on a project like this before. And so I think we are trying to be as thoughtful and sensitive as possible in making sure that we are providing the accommodations and making this opportunity as accessible to all, to be a part of the conversation and to provide the feedback that we want to hear. So again, I can't emphasize enough, we're going to be looking to the experts, right? We're not the experts. That's why we invited all of you to be here today. And we really want you to, let us know when we maybe aren't, thinking as broadly or as thoughtfully about something. We need that feedback so that we can make this experience, as positive and helpful for all. So here, we've outlined some of the accommodations that we'll be providing throughout the process for the meetings, and then, the content as well. So we want to make sure, like I said, that we're providing the most accessible opportunity for everybody that we want to be a part of this process. And, at any point, please just chime in and let us know what we're missing throughout the entire process. And I think Catherine is going to go for the next two slides.
Yeah, do we want to pause if there are any questions before we move on to this, or I can dive into this and then we could open it up for discussion too. If anybody has any. Okay.
There's two more slides.
We'll cover these
there.
slides and then open it up for discussion. So one of the first engagement opportunities we want to start with is hosting a couple of focus group sessions. These are really going to be an opportunity to gather feedback very early in the process in a targeted way from key stakeholders. Our goals for these focus groups will include having focused and more detailed discussions about the project, gathering feedback based on individual expertise and experiences from a really broad range of perspectives. And our goal is to, encourage open dialogue and kind of consensus building around the really diverse range of needs that we're trying to address and opportunities that we have at hand to explore. So the way the focus groups are going to work, we will host 2 sessions. So far, that's what we're planning is 2 sessions, one that will be virtual and one that will be in person. And they'll be structured in a way that will provide, the background and kind of overview of the project, but really more than being just a presentation, we're going to dive into some facilitated conversations around different focus points for the project. So gathering and having conversations around engagement, educational opportunities for the project, and then inclusivity and accessibility as well. At this point, those are the sort of topic areas that we are envisioning having these conversations around. What we want with the focus groups is, again, to gather this initial feedback from key stakeholders that will inform kind of the rest of the engagement process. So at each stage of the process, as Erin was saying, having meetings, charrettes, surveys, and this initial opportunity for really in-depth conversations will help to inform how we structure those meetings and charrettes, and what kinds of questions do we need to be asking in the survey. So those are the types of, this information will all, or feedback will all support the development of the engagement process. Next slide, please. So we have developed a draft list of potential invitees to the focus group sessions. And what we're going to be asking of all of you, either during this, conversation here today or following this meeting is really to give us feedback on who are we missing, who else is a key stakeholder that would be important to invite to one of these preliminary focus group sessions. So I believe that all of your organizations should be reflected in this list, although we may have missed, but I think all of you are reflected, and then additional stakeholder groups that we've identified. And this is a first pass, so we're definitely looking for feedback on this list. And I'm gonna turn it back to Brandon to talk about next steps, but we'll pause here, I guess, and just open it up for discussion as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I think now's a good time to open it up to discussion, as you said, Catherine. So if there are questions or comments specific to either the questions we asked you directly, or, you know, I think we'd love to know your thoughts on this, if what we're proposing makes sense, and what other considerations we need to make. So I will open it up. And I guess the best way to do this would be to raise your hand, and then we'll call on you, and we'll just go in the order of hands that are raised. Does that make sense? Okay. With that, the floor is yours, everyone.
Hi, Brandon, everyone. I had a quick question, kind of. First off, great job, wonderful presentation, team. Thanks a lot. I think everybody can probably see how much thought and effort's gone into this already. So it's great that you could all be here for the launch of this kind of more formally. Just a couple questions about, as we know that the schedule could change a little bit, but do we think that the public meetings, which are a couple months off, do we think that they'll be both virtual and in person? Will we make that offering to accommodate? Okay, all right.
Yeah, and that's one thing we're going to be, and for focus groups as well as public meetings, we want to offer a virtual option and an in-person option. So there'll be multiple engagements, but we'll be presenting the same thing. But, you know, we're trying to be as sensitive and accommodating, because not everyone can make it to a public meeting. Not everyone can make it to, you know, a specific site to do an in-person meeting. Not everyone has access to a computer. So providing as many options as we can is going to be important.
Thank you, Brandon.
Kara, you raised your hand.
As a question, maybe if there aren't other questions from the advisory committee just yet about the process or the project, I'd love to hear from folks about how the populations that they serve currently engage with nature, or what are the barriers to that happening? Because I think that's one of the key first questions we're going to be asking.
Thank you, Kara. Mallory just raised her hand as well, so maybe she can answer that.
I'll answer that, but before I forget, if you want an organization that's a little more local, like I don't know if the Hearing Loss Association of America is here, but the Center for Hearing and Deaf Services, we have a very vibrant deaf community here in Pittsburgh, and I would definitely reach out to them.
Excellent, thank you for that.
And I would maybe also consider reaching out to the Council of Three Rivers American Indian Center. They're pretty small, but I think especially considering like the nature of the project, it would be definitely really, really good to have some like Native representation at these meetings.
Excellent, thank you.
And then to answer your question, Kara, sorry, I'm monopolizing everything. Tell me to stop if I need to. So class is located we're technically in Swissvale, but we're right by Regent Square and what's that other neighborhood? We're like right by the exit onto 376 near Edgewood Town Center. That's the other neighborhood. And our office is actually located right where Frick Park comes out. So there's like a little parking lot down there. So we have this 3-floor building, and our day program, our adult day program, is actually located on that bottom level. And so there's like some good people watching out there. There's always people like parking their cars down there and biking or taking their dogs for walks, and that's very nice. But from like 1951 to 2013, class was actually United Cerebral Palsy. We had a very amicable split at that time, but probably more than half of the people we support in our day program, in our residential program, have cerebral palsy and use motorized wheelchairs, not necessarily when they're younger, but especially as they age. And the thing about motorized wheelchairs is they are not like, they're a lot of, it's really hard to get one that is for both indoor and outdoor use. The standard like motorized wheelchair is technically only for indoor use, even though people are expected to use it when they leave their home and go through a parking lot and things like that. So, you know, our standard trails aren't necessarily paved. And it would be nice if there were a little more paved options for folks so they could get like further into the parks.
Absolutely, that's really good feedback, and that's something we struggle with at the FEC is some of that, you know, that trail surfacing, that fine kind of limestone. It's great and it's accessible when it's installed and maintained, but as soon as there's a heavy rainstorm, that's it. It's not, you know, so I think we're going to be looking at materials or things to make sure that we're meeting that standard for, and that's durable for a long period of time. It's not just it's accessible the day you install it and then it's not. I think that's going to be a key aspect of this project. So thank you. Matt, I think you have your hand up next.
Yeah, I think on that note, Mallory, excellent point. One of the biggest resources that we have here in Pittsburgh, as far as wheeled mobility, that would be a great group to reach out to, is the Human Engineering Research Laboratory at the University of Pittsburgh. They're one of the top researchers in wheelchairs and wheeled mobility in the country. So if you're wondering what is going to work for a wheelchair as far as path of travel, they're going to tell you, and they've researched it, and they're going to be the experts in that field. So
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Very helpful. Anyone else? Either on, sorry, I took the screen share down because I thought it, Jen Schnackenberg made a good suggestion that it's a little bit easier to talk to each other when we can see each other and we're not talking at a slide. So if you need it back up, I can definitely put it back up if you need to look at something. But any thoughts on our engagement approach? You know, accommodations, are we thinking about enough? Or, you know, do we think that our focus group sessions will really kind of tease out some of that more detailed information, making sure that, you know, we're engaging in folks in a media or method in which they can respond. We're providing enough accommodations that people can feel comfortable and invited to attend meetings. I guess, yeah. Are there thoughts on that, or do you all kind of feel that's more of a role that the advisory or the sensory or I'm mixing words now, the focus groups can provide us? I got a thumbs up. I like it.
Brandon, I had one thought, and maybe, I mean, given the duration of the project that you led, which was the Mellon Park Action Plan, which is you kind of recently wrapped up, did you find that the focus groups, and kind of as you started to move a little bit tighter into the funnel in connecting with, and that was a unique project in that there were 4, 5, 6 adjacent neighborhoods to the park. It's myriad of uses, et cetera, but did you start to tease out some of that information as you kind of move through those committee and focus groups meeting? Is that what you learned from that process?
Yeah, I think one of the things we learned in that process, and maybe this is helpful for folks about why we're doing kind of an advisory committee and a focus group, is, you know, we can reach out to you folks and we'll get a sense of some of the issues that people might care about. And sometimes it's good to have those discussions in a more focused setting, in a public meeting setting, like Mellon Park, for instance. There's a lot to cover and we can't spend time talking about everything in detail, but that information is important. That feedback is important to get. So the goal of the focus groups is it gives us that space to have some detailed conversations about things like, the physical infrastructure that we need to consider, like, is that space wide enough for a wheelchair to turn around? Is there clearance under a table? Like those very detailed, nuanced discussions, we can have those in a focus group session, or about educational opportunities and really going down a rabbit hole about what we could learn out in this space. So it's just another venue for people to get their point across, explain what they care about. And there's enough space, enough room that we're not kind of talking over other people who don't have a chance to talk. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Joe, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. I just want to say really quickly, like, this is so exciting. It's very cool what we do here. And I'm really proud of everyone that I work with that we're just at this first step and how exciting the project is. Granted, I'm the finance person, so I might be a little out of place in making suggestions, but the list of engagement seems very local. Should we reach out to peer organizations across the country or other people that maybe have successfully implanted something like this?
That's a good question, and maybe I would pose that to the members in our advisory committee. Are there other organizations? I think so. I guess, Joe, to answer your first question, I think one, it is important to have that local representation because these are the people who are going to be using it most. But you make a good point that there are broad organizations that might have experience. They might have done this somewhere else, or this might not be the first time a project like this has been done. So I guess I'd kick it over to the advisory committee. Are there any national organizations, statewide organizations, et cetera, that we should look into? Mallory, I think you're the first up.
There's an organization called Disabled Hikers. They have a website, Facebook, Instagram. They have like a lot of trail guides and things for people with disabilities who enjoy hiking. So they probably have some very good firsthand experience.
Excellent, thank you. Any others that people can think of? Kara?
I just wanted to say, I think as one of the things we'll do during the information gathering phase is we may be looking for precedent projects in other, I can think of a few off the top of my head, but we will probably kind of do a survey trying to see who has done this before and what kinds of features have they included and that kind of thing.
Great, thank you. And one thing to note too, we just threw a lot of information at you. So if you all need some time to process and would like to follow up with emails or suggestions, and we were planning on sending out a link to a recording of this, as well as maybe some meeting minutes, as well as that page of focus group, the kind of the draft list that we put together. So if it's preferable for people to just kind of think about this a little bit and then respond offline, that's totally fine too. I think any information that we can get from all of you in any format or venue is what we want. So there's no point, we don't have to stay on here until 11 o'clock. If people would want to go about their day, think about things, and maybe provide email or meet separately, however you want to do it. Hillary.
Yeah, one person you might want to reach out to from another entity would be Christopher Knoll. He's the ADA coordinator for parks specifically in New York City. And I've seen him give a number of talks about projects they've done that are not totally dissimilar from this and some of their larger parks. And I have his contact information. I can put it in the chat to Aaron if that's helpful.
Yeah, that would be hugely helpful. Thank you.
Okay. He's great. Okay, great.
Okay. Anything else? Thoughts, concerns? All right. Well, let's give you all a half hour back of your life. And anything else that you want to share with us, feel free to either email Aaron Tobin or myself or anyone on the project team, and we will take it into account. But thank you all for taking the time to be here and learn about this project with us this morning. We're really excited to work with all of you, and we'll probably share out an email with kind of the next steps after this meeting, just so you're all aware. But thank you again. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Talk to you
Thanks all.
soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Brandon. Bye-bye.
Good job, Brandon.
Thank you. Did you? Oh, let's stop the recording.